Well, howdy, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Muzyka Show, your favorite update in the battle for life, family, and freedom. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me today. I'm Muzyka, attorney and human rights advocate, and I serve as president and CEO of Sidewalk Advocates for Life, the nation's largest peaceful sidewalk outreach organization. Prenatal diagnosis, meaning news that something is not developing right with a baby in utero, can leave parents feeling bewildered, even bereaved, and wondering what to do next. The abortion industry often swoops in at this moment and relentlessly puts pressure on parents to abort these special children. And not just the abortion industry, the medical community at large. It's often that 18 to 20 week anatomy scan, maybe earlier, but typically at this point in pregnancy, or maybe they realize something is not developing right. And they come in and they suddenly start flipping a switch, using dehumanizing language, scaring parents into making an abortion decision. I've even heard testimonies from parents that when they were in that anatomy scan and they did that ultrasound and, the room fell silent and they brought in another medical professional, people are going in and out. And then all of a sudden the door slams shut. They tell them what's going on and they at times refuse to open the door until an abortion decision is made. No kidding. This is absolutely unbelievable. Fighting this pressure in the culture to choose abortion in this case is Beverly Jacobson of Mama Bear Care. Beverly and her husband received a prenatal diagnosis with their daughter, Verity, and her experience fighting for her baby girl moved her to offer support and resources to those in the same situation. So today we want to have a robust conversation about how we can help parents in this situation to feel supported, how we can help them to carry to term, to welcome their precious child this side of heaven for as long as God wills it, to help them to choose life. So let me go ahead and introduce our special guest. Beverly Jacobson is an Air Force wife and homeschooling mother of 9. Her pregnancy with her youngest was overshadowed by a devastating prenatal diagnosis. When Beverly realized how many women are pressured to abort in this situation, she launched a nonprofit ministry to provide specific care and resources for them. Her mission is to change the narrative surrounding genetic anomalies from heartache to hope. Let's go ahead and welcome Beverly Jacobson. Beverly, how are you doing today?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, Lauren.
Honor to have you. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. I would love for you to share your story and how you came to start Mama Bear Care.
Yeah, it all started, it's hard to believe it's been over 8 years now when we got that phone call from the doctor and just puttering along with this pregnancy with my youngest. I was, tired. I was in my early 40s, but so excited. I could feel her kicking. We didn't know it was a girl at the time. We're ready to schedule that, halfway point ultrasound. And we learned that I had an elevated risk for our daughter to have Edwards syndrome, which I had never heard about. I'd never heard of trisomy 18. That's another name for it. And really, when pressed, the doctor didn't quite know how to answer. She just kept trying to say, well, you still have a good chance that there's nothing wrong with this pregnancy. But sure enough, a few days later, we were in that ultrasound room, as you were describing, and we had sat down with a genetic counselor beforehand, so we kind of knew what to look for. And the room was just quiet. And when the doctor came in, it really was such a gut punch, just learning that, our worst fears were confirmed, that there was something wrong with our baby. And she was just very cold and clinical, immediately referring to, we just found out that we were having a girl. And for us, this is a really exciting time. We name our child. We're ready to pray specifically over this baby. And she was using the term it and fetus, and just very, there was no compassion in that moment with that doctor. And it just really was such an overwhelmingly sad and lonely time. My husband and my oldest daughter were with me, so I wasn't alone, but it just felt crushing to get that devastating news.
Yeah. You allude to this, and I hear this from parents who receive news of a prenatal diagnosis, that it's almost like a switch flips, right? And they go from talking about baby to suddenly fetus, right? We know fetus, yes, is a term for Latin for little one. We're not saying that that's wrong in and of itself, but they're starting to back off of baby and humanizing this precious little one for you. And all of a sudden, I mean, reading your testimony, they even started to call your daughter retarded, right? And using these awful terms. Can you talk about that a little bit, about that switch flipping and what that was like?
Was, you know, so the doctor with the ultrasound used some phrases like quality of life and hospice care, and was pressing us with questions. Now, I will say I personally was not pressured towards abortion. And then the specialist you're talking about never actually used the word abortion, but their attitudes were very, very clear. Now, I don't know if it's because we went into these appointments saying abortion for us is not an option. Don't even talk to us about it. But we have worked with many mamas who they say over and over that abortion's not an option. And yet, time after time, that is what is brought to the table for them. But yes, that specialty doctor that I was supposed to be getting information from, like he was the one that was in charge of the NICU unit. If our daughter were to be born alive, what was that going to look like? And all he talked to me about was, your daughter's retarded. If she survives, she'll live a futile life. She's going to be a drain on the family, mentally, emotionally, and financially. He talked about the kids and my husband, like all of us having to have buy-in because she would ruin their lives, basically. I can't even describe just, you know, that deer in the headlights feeling and that moment of not knowing how to respond. I felt powerless and helpless. And in that appointment, I was by myself. I didn't have even my husband with me. And so it was just me kind of in shock hearing these words that I never expected a medical professional would say. And, you know, I just putting myself in the place of a young mom who is there, maybe doesn't have a certain foundation or convictions as far as the value of life. And what if that mom is hearing this? And coupled with that pressure of, okay, here's the diagnosis. When do you want to schedule your termination? That's exactly how these conversations go. And in some cases, we've had our mamas even get put on the abortion schedule before they even have the conversation about what is going on with their child. So now we are years past this. Verity overcame all of these odds. You know, spoiler alert, she's 8 years old and living her best thriving life, and just such a joy and a blessing. But now I realize I think one purpose for our journey is so that we could turn around and help others on this, because I had no idea. This is a very niche, situation. I had no idea how many moms are just pressured to abort. Just that's the expectation. There's no discussion of alternatives. There's no acknowledgement of the humanity of these precious babies. And even if they are going to live a brief life, how can we honor that? How can we make this sacred and beautiful and have memories with your baby no matter how long that life is going to be here on earth? We just want to provide that tender, loving care that these mamas deserve and their babies, because mamas are given a God-given fierce love for their babies. And we want to encourage them to be the mama bears that God has called them to be and equip them to do that. Yeah.
So good. So good. It's interesting to me, you said that you were not offered abortion, probably because you had gotten out ahead of it and set that boundary, so to speak. But it sounded like with the language they were using, the way that they were talking about your future, they were indirectly pushing for that, right? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's how I do feel that there was this whole heaviness, the weight of the fact that these doctors did not value my daughter's life at all. And I realized that, okay, that's when Mama Bear is coming out. This is my baby you're talking about. And just having to push back against that narrative that she would be a drain on the family, that she, is retarded, the R word that so many people would never use that, or there are certain segments of the population who are just awful, and they're trying to do that for shock value. And I don't think he was doing it for shock value. Like, that was his opinion. Yes, it's just heartbreaking to me. I see my daughter and I don't see her diagnosis. I see, sure, complications, difficulties. We call it, in our circles, we use the term life-limiting diagnosis, not fatal diagnosis, not terminal, not a fatal fetal anomaly. That's what medical circles will use that language. But sometimes it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy that if we view this pregnancy as doomed from the beginning, then maybe parents are going to make different decisions. So I don't know. I just want to change that. I want to change that narrative. And I don't want mama bears to feel helpless the way I did when I was sitting in that doctor's office and didn't know what to say. We want to surround them and care for the mama bears so that they can care for their baby bears and advocate for them, because they're up against a lot of negative, perspectives and just the mentality that's out there, that these are disposable lives, that they're not worth anything because they'll never contribute to society.
Right, right. I've heard someone once say that we all have a life-limiting diagnosis, right? We all don't know how much time we have here on earth. And it's not to just cast aside the fact that sometimes we have members of our community, of our families, our friends that have, special challenges, right? My youngest brother, I have two younger brothers. My youngest brother is high-functioning special needs. He's autistic. He has cerebral palsy, right? And it's not to say that Kevin doesn't have challenges. He does. My parents had to figure out resources for him, even as an adult too, presently. But he is such a gift. He has brought so much to our family that we wouldn't otherwise have. Kevin has taught me things that I would have never learned if not for his presence in our family and on this earth, Can you speak to that a little bit too? Because, I've often heard too that parents, when they get a prenatal diagnosis, they're so afraid of the birth. They're so afraid of what all that might entail, what that's going to look like. They're bracing for impact, right?
Yeah.
And what I hear from parents is that diagnosis day is actually the hardest. And actually the birth tends to be very peaceful and sweet. And you actually see the beauty, the glory of this special angel that was sent to you, right? Again, not to say that there aren't challenges like all of us have, right? But can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I do feel like the diagnosis and the rest of that pregnancy for me were so traumatic. It's why I launched Mama Bear Care, because that pregnancy for me was so fraught with anxiety, and I really wanted to empower moms in that space. And I didn't see a lot of opportunities where that was happening in the pro-life world. And I was just coming into contact with mamas who needed this specific kind of care. Getting ready for that birth, when you don't know, are you going to bury your baby? Or are you going to bring her home? That is such a weird place to be. It is such a paradox, because I could feel her kicking away, doing gymnastics, causing me to catch my breath because she was kicking my ribs. And yet, supposedly she was incompatible with life. It just didn't compute. And yet, yes, it is a life-limiting diagnosis for a reason. So many of our parents do end up bereaved. But when you can empower these parents to create a birth plan that honors that life, whatever it's going to look like in the delivery room, that changes everything. I couldn't control the outcome, and I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. But having that mama bear moment for me allowed me to take agency in a way that I didn't feel that I had before that encounter with that doctor. I created a birth plan. I got input from other parents, and I said, okay, if she is stillborn, this is what I want us to do. I want to make memories with her. I want her siblings to meet her and hold her. I want pictures, and this is who I want there, and this is what I want that to look like. And if she's born alive, let's stabilize her and let's assess what are her needs. And I will be completely honest. I don't hide the fact that I was terrified. I really was terrified of this. I had 8 healthy children, and I was overwhelmed. I could not fathom what it would look like to bring a little girl home with medical complexities and not know how long we were going to get to care for her. How would I care for her? I didn't know what that looked like. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. My degree is in English education. I can write and I can speak.
Right.
I didn't know how I would do this. And so as hard as I was fighting for her, I was also terrified. And I just, now, of course, many years have passed and that steep learning curve, we're still learning about Verity and what her needs are. And we just take it a day at a time, a year at a time, do what we need to do when we need to do that. But we acknowledge that at Mama Bear Care. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not going to say, oh, if you do this, you'll have a happily ever after. Only God knows what these stories are going to be for these families. But to be able to infuse them with the truth that their babies matter, they are valuable and precious, they're not a mistake, and there is hope. And, we have that hope because of Christ, and we know what he's done for us, and we know that there's eternity. So there may be a day when we have to say goodbye to Verity, and there are many little ones that we've had to say goodbye to, and we grieve with the parents in our community. But it does look different when they have that hope and when they have that time with their baby, when they're not pressured to end that life prematurely. I just, that only compounds the grief. And we've seen that sadly with some moms who unfortunately have made that choice, and it just is devastating. It doesn't take away the grief of the diagnosis at all.
Yeah. I've heard that parents that choose to carry to term have much less complicated grief, right? There really is a peace there in spite of this hard challenge. And again, being real that you may be in a situation where you're giving parents resources and their child will be with them for a while, or they may have to let go and allow that baby to go home. And this is why the journey of support is so important. I would love for you to talk about some of the resources that you may have found in your journey that were really helpful. And then what does Mama Bear Care provide to parents who receive news of a prenatal diagnosis, especially if some of us, may be in the situation, or we have friends who may need support because they received news of a prenatal diagnosis. What does that support look like?
Yeah. So for me, I found online support groups. It was some weeks after our diagnosis. It was a long time of drowning in grief and uncertainty. But then when we did get connected with a rare trisomy support group, a couple of them, that's when I started to realize that maybe I should prepare for her to live and not die. And that really changed a lot of my perspective, because I didn't know that there were children living with Edwards syndrome. So the idea of an online support group, because it is rare. I mean, many of us do know families who have an individual with Down syndrome. That was familiar to me. But more significant needs were, of course, I've come across some, but it wasn't like I could call up a friend and say, hey, tell me about your experience with this. I didn't know anybody who had gone through this. So that online connection point for me was kind of like a lifeline, that I'm not alone. There are other families going through this. And so when we began to think about how can we help others, we've come through a dark season, a difficult season ourselves. And now, wow, we have this beautiful new normal, and we are filled with joy, and Verity brings such blessings. How can we help others? And I've always been passionately pro-life, and I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I knew that Verity was bringing something into our lives that God wanted us to use to speak the truth of the value of all human life. And so when we, got our heads above water and we were able to turn around and offer help to others, that's the first thing I thought of, is connecting these moms and helping them during that pregnancy period. So our prenatal support group is called From Diagnosis to Delivery. That's the same name that we've had from the beginning, before we were even a 501c3. But From Diagnosis to Delivery is, that prenatal support network where you can ask the questions you're afraid to ask elsewhere. You can connect with other mamas who have been where you are. Many of our moms have stayed. We're over 600 members now, and that's because a lot of the moms have stayed after their pregnancies. Some of them are caring for medically complex children. Some have been bereaved, and we do have a separate bereavement support group as well, because we understand sometimes it's just painful to be around, mamas who are expecting. So we offer those two online support groups. We also offer one-on-one individualized care planning with our Mama Bear care coordinator. And her name is Catherine. And she was one of the first mamas who came into that prenatal support group. And I got to love on her during her pregnancy. Very complex. She had her little girl in March of 2021, and Indiana was her name. And she lived 6 beautiful weeks, all of them spent in the NICU. And so Catherine has gone through the journey herself with a prenatal diagnosis, and then, sadly losing her little girl. But I realized as she was involved in our group still, she actually is so uniquely qualified. She is a NICU nurse with years of NICU training and labor and delivery, and she's been in hospital admin. So she and I were building this relationship and this friendship, and she now serves as our part-time Mama Bear care coordinator. And we are praying that we can bring her on full-time, because really the work is so much, the need is so great that she could literally spend a full-time job just doing that one-on-one care that she does with our mamas right now. So the moms who are ready and willing and want that extra help get to walk alongside with her, helping them prepare for their medical appointments. What questions should they be asking if they are getting some pushback from that medical team? She has helped many moms and families transfer care to a different care team, even to different hospitals who will provide life-saving interventions at birth. I had no idea the level of medical discrimination that we have in our country. That's probably a whole other episode's worth there. But she helps our families navigate some of these really difficult decisions and understand the medicalese, the terminology that's coming at them. She is just such a blessing to our community. We also provide counseling services at no cost to our mamas. We've partnered with pastoral counselors who are familiar with this journey. They walked it with their daughter, who has a little girl with Edwards syndrome as well. So they know firsthand what it looks like to walk alongside a mama who's been given a diagnosis. And they've been working with us for almost 3 years now, actually, providing counseling at no cost to our mama bears. And then, of course, there's the fun stuff, the gifts, the resources that we get to put in their hands, a welcome package, which provides a pregnancy journal and a guidebook and gifts for baby and mama that they can have on hand to take into the hospital. A love box to honor that life when the little one has passed, a hope box when they're in the NICU and they can have some goodies. So just a lot of things. We just want to make it as practical and tangible as possible. It's just a very difficult mental and emotional and spiritual journey. And so anything we can do to walk alongside these mamas and empower them and just unleash that fierce love that they already have for their baby bear, but knowing that they don't have to do it alone is just so key.
What a beautiful service you all provide. Wow, 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 wow. And if people want to take advantage of those services, we're going to leave contact information here at the end of the podcast and put it in the show notes as well. Let me ask this, Beverly. What are the unique blessings that Verity has brought into your family that you otherwise wouldn't have if you hadn't had her?
Yeah. I mean, you alluded to some yourself with your story, with your family. And Verity, I just wish that I could bottle up the feeling that comes over me when I think about how Verity has changed our lives. It almost always makes me tear up because I think back to how fearful I was to be the mom of a child with significant needs. And just, I felt so inadequate and so overwhelmed. And I wish that I could have told myself, like if my future self could have gone back and said, it's going to be okay. And you're going to learn what you need to learn when you need to learn it. And you'll take it a day at a time. But more than the fear and more than the grief is the blessing that this little girl is going to pour out on not just us, her immediate family, but everyone that she has come in contact with. Yeah. And, when the doctor said that she would be a drain on the family, I wish I could go back to him. I have no idea where he is now. He's no longer at that hospital. I will say that. I did have words, by the way, with the patient advocate. But my kids love Verity fiercely. They would do anything for her. They would protect her. There are her youngest in age to her, so she's number 9. So number 8 and number 7, the closest ones to her, are her buddies. Like, they can make her laugh like nobody else. All of her siblings would say that she has changed them. She's changed all of us. She has, she's got her daddy wrapped around her little finger, her little crooked fingers. All of us would say we are more compassionate. We're more patient. We absolutely cherish the time that we've had with her. We spent her first year wondering, is this the day she's going to die? Because that was hovering over us, and then finally stopped, waiting for death. And we're like, we're living, we're going to embrace life. And how can we make memories? And how can we take her along with us and do whatever we would normally do anyway? So, we haven't gotten to do a cruise yet, but but we've traveled, we've made memories. We take her, everywhere we can with us, and she's just part of who we are. And when we're out and about, I can't tell you how many smiles I see. We get to share her story with others, and she exudes joy. And she's nonverbal, but she certainly communicates. And last night we had friends over, they're from out of town, and we were getting to catch up with them. And the last time they saw Verity, she was itty bitty. And so they were just amazed at how much she's grown and developed. And there were 4 adults laughing hysterically because Verity was cracking herself up with her own little games. And just, I was thinking about that. She's got all of us just totally enamored with her giggles and her joy. I don't think you can put a price on that. You can't even describe that. But she has made all of us better people for sure, just by being herself, just who God created her to be.
Oh, what an incredible gift. So beautiful. So beautiful. And I hope that more parents that receive this maybe a hard diagnosis, that their heart is open to what God can do. And you said something so profound, that instead of waiting for death, you decided to embrace life, right? And everything that came with that. And there's no doubt that when we embrace life and life abundant, God has so much more for us than sometimes we can even see. Yes. So beautiful.
Yes.
So beautiful.
And such provision that he gives us. I've been overwhelmed by his goodness, that when I thought I couldn't do it, something happened. We didn't realize we could qualify for nursing care or in-home therapies, things that we didn't. And again, this is just part of that education that we try to provide for parents, that you don't have to do this alone. There are people and resources to help you. And Mama Bear Care, we can't do everything. We're tiny, but we're growing, but we can do our part, and then we can help make connections, because we do have connections in all kinds of communities. We've served at least 24, probably more, specific diagnoses. So it doesn't matter what kind of news you're getting from the doctor. We're happy to walk alongside you. And if we can't help in a certain area, we will certainly, try to hand you off, and make sure you get the care that you need.
So good. Well, how can people connect more with you at Mama Bear Care, or even get support themselves after news of a prenatal diagnosis? Because I know you need people to support your mission, and also there may be people who need your services as well.
Right. Yeah, we welcome Mama Bears from anywhere. We've literally served around the country, and in probably close to 20 different countries, so outside the U.S. as well. We've mailed packages to places I had no idea we would have a chance to influence. But then certainly so much can be done online. We can connect you with our counselors online and our Mama Bear Care coordinator, for virtual meetings, so that they can help you. So mamabearcare.org certainly has a place. I think if you scroll all the way down, there's a are you pregnant with a diagnosis button that you can click on. You can contact us that way, through our social media channels as well. A lot of times we are connected because a friend of someone with a diagnosis has found us or reached out. You feel paralyzed when you get a diagnosis, and some people are immediately on the computer researching and trying to hook up with places like us. And sometimes they're just so overwhelmed and paralyzed by grief. And so if you're a friend of someone or family member of someone who's received a diagnosis, we'd love to walk alongside. You can, connect them with us that way. But mamabearcare.org is our website. And for those who have a heart for this ministry, like if you've ever gone through that, sitting in a doctor's office and getting that news, or if you can put yourself there and your heart just breaks for the mama who's devastated with this news and you want to come alongside us, we'd love to have you join the Mama Bear movement and be a monthly partner with us and help mamas who are getting this news and probably, more often than not, being pushed right towards abortion. And we certainly, want to be the ones to be able to intercede in that situation and say there is a better way, and we will walk alongside you to carry to term and whatever that looks like.
So good, Beverly. I'm so grateful for you and your heroic team at Mama Bear Care. This is such a message, such an important message that we need to take into the rest of the world. Like we were praying before the show and, we were talking as well about the fact that this area of ministry is left wanting, that there's so much that the world needs to understand about how to respond well to news of a prenatal diagnosis in a life-affirming manner, and that there is hope, right?
Yes.
That there's so many benefits for mamas who are willing to open their hearts and carry to term and to put themselves into God's hands, to put their little one into God's hands and to receive whatever blessing on the other side of that he has, even amidst the challenges, right? And I know that in over 20 years on the sidewalk, I have seen relentless pressure put on these parents, that so many times they have an appointment, maybe an anatomy scan on Friday, and they're at the abortion facility on Monday morning. And if we can just get these parents to slow down a little bit, to let them know that there's hope and support available to them. Absolutely. So many of them are, going to be at the ready to receive so much more support and love and hope than they ever dreamed possible, and it really is made possible by Mama Bear Care and some of our other partners. We're just so grateful for you guys. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Really
and for what you are doing as well. I remember talking to Brianna, up in Boulder, and she said that prenatal diagnosis is one of the highest reasons that people are coming to that awful clinic in Boulder where the doctor does those late term abortions. And, we talked about, how, if you have just a moment in time, what can you say? And, just the idea that you don't have to do this alone and we're here to help and we have people and resources. And I just wish that they knew that termination is not going to take away that pain or that grief. It only takes away the opportunity to experience any kind of joy or blessing, even if it's a short life, knowing that you did everything you could for your baby bear to be able to have those memories and to have that time together is so much better for mama. And so, yes, thank you also for what you are doing and all of the sidewalk advocates. I think you are amazing. I wish I could be out there with you. Maybe in a different season of life, I can physically be on the sidewalk, but my heart is there and we are certainly here standing behind you, ready to help if you have the conversation with those moms.
Oh, thank you for that. And how providential. We just found out last night, the eve of the recording of this show, that Dr. Warren Hearn's facility is closing. So I don't know if you knew that,
That's
Beverly.
Amazing. No.
Yes. He posted a big note on the website. And I mean, they have been very honest about the fact that they do third trimester abortions. Women fly from all over the United States to go to this facility to terminate. I mean, for any reason at all. And you see a lot of patients that have received news of a prenatal diagnosis. So anyways, glory to God for that. In his message. That's fabulous. Huge news. We had a save there actually a few weeks ago. One of the first, in fact, it may be the first that the Boulder community knew about, the pro-life community knew about. So glory to God for that. But in his message, Dr. Hearn is very upfront about the fact that he still supports so-called abortion rights. So we need to pray for him that he will repent and come to Christ, because it's estimated that he has taken the lives of more than 42,000 babies in that time at that facility. And that to me is just mind blowing. So anyways, good news. And yes, we need to keep charging forward. So
prayer changes so much. And you're right. We should pray for him. That is a heavy burden to carry. But
yeah.
grace,
And one that
Jesus.
Christ will take if he's
Right.
willing to give it to him.
Yes.
So
Amen. Well, that is a fabulous bit of news to end on. I did not know that, but that makes my heart happy. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, keep up the great work, Beverly. We'll be following you closely. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. God bless you all too.
God bless. All right. Well, a closing thought here. On the sidewalk, we, as we've alluded to, encounter the situation a lot. And what we try to do is get that parent, that precious bereaved parent, to slow down, to consider the advantages of carrying to term, to know that support and resources are available to them through incredible partners like Mama Bear Care, to get ready to welcome and, yes, celebrate the life of their precious child as long as he or she is with them. I want to encourage all of you to consider attending a Sidewalk Advocates for Life training in your community to learn more about how to help parents in this scenario and many more choose life. Let's be sure that we recognize these precious, special children as the amazing angels and gifts to the world that they are, and help parents and communities truly treasure and cherish their lives for as long as they're with us and even beyond, right? They truly have so much to teach us. And I don't know that I've ever shared this testimony publicly, but I remember when my mom was 9 months pregnant with my youngest brother. So I have two younger brothers. The one right underneath me, Ryan, there's a 2-year gap, and then there's an 8-year gap, and mom and dad had Kevin. And when my mom was 9 months pregnant, actually, I think 2 days past her due date, she was in a car accident. Now, it didn't look like a serious car accident. It was a pretty hefty fender bender, but her stomach slammed into the steering wheel. She began to leak amniotic fluid. And there's a question about what happened after that. Did infection set in? We know that there was a loss of fluid, and really the OB-GYN should have delivered him right away. But instead, they waited for over 2 weeks. He began to lose weight in the womb and so forth. And it wasn't until he was about 2 years old that we figured out that Kevin had some significant special needs. Today, he is a high-functioning special needs adult. He has autism. He was actually diagnosed initially with it. They pulled the diagnosis, re-diagnosed him as an adult. He has cerebral palsy. We figured out from the accident, or the aftermath of the accident, that the areas of his brain that were affected were actually behavior as well as speech. So he stutters a little bit when he talks. You can tell that there's something a little bit different, right? But I will tell you that Kevin is one of the greatest gifts that God ever gave us. So we didn't have news of a prenatal diagnosis during pregnancy. It wasn't until much later that we figured out Kevin had special needs. But I can at least share with the world that there are things that I've learned from Kevin that I otherwise would not have learned. That, just like Beverly referenced, I really truly believe that I'm a more compassionate and patient person. My other brother and I, our spouses, we've talked about that as we get older, and my mom has already gone on to glory. She's already gone home to heaven, but my dad is still with us, that when my dad eventually is called home, we're going to need to be there for Kevin in a special way. He is going to need to have siblings living near him. He's going to need to have us looking at contracts and helping him maybe get an apartment, and we'll have to check in on him regularly. And if you look at it, it really is a blessing, because Kevin has allowed us to grow. He's allowed us to become better people. And Kevin can make people laugh in a way that I can't make people laugh, right? He really does bring so much joy to the table. And Kevin has had a special mission here on earth and still has a special mission in front of him. So, for those of you that share that testimony, I know that you know what I'm talking about. These children are such special gifts. And I hope that we can help the medical community, help the abortion industry, help the world see that these are the special angels that we've been given to learn something that we otherwise would not have learned. So important. All right. Well, with that, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Laura Muzyka Show. We'll be back here next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central on Facebook Live, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Thanks so much, everybody.